So thank you for inviting me. And I am going to quickly share my screen.
My pleasure. So we'll hear a little bit from you, and then that'll lead us into a panel conversation. We'll pick up some of those questions.
Perfect.
Stage is
Yeah.
yours.
Perfect. Great. And thank you so much. So I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody in case you're not familiar with me or my firm. I'm Kathleen Walch. I am a managing partner and principal analyst at Cognilytica. We're an AI-focused analyst advisory and education firm. We cover about 20,000 vendors in the AI space. So as you can imagine, it's very large vendors all the way to very small. And we produce market research, advisory, and guidance on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cognitive technology. We also have role-specific education as well, including the best practices CPMAI methodology. As I mentioned, I'm a managing partner and principal analyst at Cognilytica. I also have a podcast as well. So Lex has a great podcast. I'm the host of the AI Today podcast, which has been going on for 4 years. So I encourage you, if you're not listening to that already, to check it out. And also manage a bunch of AI communities, including AI in government, the data for AI community, machine learning lifecycle community, and we are launching a few others. So stay tuned for that. And then I write for Forbes and TechTarget as well. So I cover, the AI market as a whole, various use cases, how things are being adopted, and market coverage areas as well. So when, we talk to different companies, different vendors, different end users on AI, and if you've done this yourself, you may find that when, AI is a umbrella term and it encompasses a lot of different things. So if I'm talking about AI, I may be talking about a facial recognition system. Somebody else may be talking about an autonomous vehicle. Somebody else may be talking about an AI-enabled chatbot. All of those fall under, that very large umbrella of AI, but they are not the same. So at Cognilytica, we looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of different use cases and found that all of these applications and use cases fall into one or more of the 7 patterns of AI. So as you can see, it's a wheel because not one is more important than the other. And just at a very high level, I will go over what the 7 patterns are and why it's important to break it down and talk a little bit further, not just say you're doing AI, but say you're doing a hyper-personalization use case or a recognition use case. So the first one is hyper-personalization. And this is where we are treating each individual as an individual. No longer do we need to bucket you into groups and categories and generalize. We can really treat you as an individual. Obviously, with advertising, this is incredible, but you can go one step farther and say, how can we have personalized medicine and healthcare? How can we have personalized finance? Not everybody who has, the same credit score or shopping patterns, buying patterns are the same with their savings, for example. We also have the recognition pattern. This is where we're making sense of unstructured data. The large majority of the data that we have is unstructured. Images, for example, emails, how do we get that information? So recognition is really making sense of unstructured data. Then we have the conversation and human interaction pattern of AI. And this is really, helping humans communicate better, whether that's between humans or with machines to humans or humans to machines as well. Then we have the predictive analytics and decision pattern. So this is really where we're taking past or current data and using it to help humans make better decisions. We have goal-driven systems pattern. This is really reinforcement learning where we're trying to find the optimal, path to a solution. We have autonomous systems. This is where we're trying to really remove the human from the loop and do things with little to no human intervention. I always think about autonomous vehicles when I think about this pattern, but you can also have autonomous business processes. It can be either software or hardware in this. I always like to note with autonomous systems that automation is not autonomous. So for example, if we are automating various processes or we are incorporating RPA, robotic process automation, into our workflow, automation is incredibly useful. It's just not intelligent. So don't confuse automation and autonomous systems. And then the last one is patterns and anomalies. If you can spot, machines are really great at spotting the patterns, especially in very large data sets. Humans are not good at that. So if there's a pattern to spot, machines are really good at that. They can also spot outliers and anomalies as well. A really great example in this is fraud detection. So now that we have framed what the 7 patterns of AI is, it's important to, as I mentioned earlier, use this because it can help shortcut your projects so that you can have better chances of success. If you know that you're doing a, chatbot, a conversation pattern, and you're going to use you're going to build an AI enabled chatbot. The data that you need for that is very different than the data that you need to build a recognition system, for example. So it helps shortcut what data you need. Also, it helps you to identify what algorithm you need to select when you're building your model. So that's why this is so important, to make sure that you're really understanding and kind of breaking it down one level farther when you're doing your AI projects. On top of that, we have seen more companies than we'd like to admit that do not have methodologies, best practices in place on how to actually successfully run that AI project. So we advocate at Cognilytica for the cognitive project management for AI methodology. It's a data-centric methodology built off of CRISP-DM, that's data-centric, but the CPMAI also brings in agile and data science enhancements. And it uses the 7 patterns of AI as well, which is very important to make sure that you're at least understanding that at a very fundamental level when you are looking at your AI projects. And all steps are iterative on one another. So you'll notice that we start with our business understanding. And it's important to start with business understanding because you want to make sure that you're solving an actual business problem. Don't do this if you're not solving an actual business problem, or if people who who are supposed to be using this won't actually use it. If you're not getting buy-in from the end users, then don't use it. We then move to data understanding. We want to make sure that we're understanding the data sources, the data environment, the data quality, because not all data is created the same. And unfortunately, not all data is clean, which leads us to our next step, which is the data preparation stage. This is where we really have to spend a lot of time making sure that data is good, because garbage in is garbage out. So in this phase, we have data labeling, data preparation, data wrangling. You're going to want to make sure that you know where your data is coming from. We have seen way too many projects fail because they're not documenting. They don't have a methodology in place, and they're not moving forward in a logical way. Next, after data preparation, we have data modeling. So we're going to be tuning and training our algorithm selection as well, and then we're going to be making sure that things are good to go. We have our model evaluation. So in this stage, we can retrain, we'll do validation and testing. Then we have model operationalization. So where is this model actually going? And as I said, all steps are iterative on each other. So that's very important because you can always go back a step if needed. We have trained many organizations on this, both in the public and private sector. So if you're looking for, the most widely adopted best practices, vendor neutral methodology, I definitely encourage you to check out the CPMAI methodology.